Welcome to Renegade Thinkers Unite, a show that will help you transform your marketing from mere messaging to programs that break the rules and make a difference. Join the movement today and learn non-traditional techniques that give you an edge. Now, here's your Chief Marketing Renegade, Drew Nizer.
As the late, great Joan Rivers used to say, can we talk? Seriously, finding renegade thinkers week after week, particularly at the CMO level, is not as easy as you might think. But I really want you to know, my kind listeners, that I'm increasingly fussy about who is on the show and how our discourse goes. Not every interview that I record makes the cut, and we try to edit out the trite wherever possible. So what's left is the good stuff, the stuff that enlightens, inspires, and educates we students of marketing. And I say we because I don't think any of us can afford not to be perpetual students of this ever-evolving profession that is marketing. Which brings me to my guest today, Doug Zarkin, the head of marketing for Pearle Vision. I saw Doug speak to a group of his peers at a recent CMO Club dinner, and what I noticed more than anything was a number of the CMOs were taking notes during his talk. I also noticed that Doug was the first CMO Club speaker who asked the audience for their favorite swear words, a clear indication of his renegade spirit. So Doug, welcome to my bleeping show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Looking forward to getting into some renegade thinking and talking a little bit about, frankly, what is needed in order to be successful in today's climate.
You've been at Pearle Vision for about 5 years, and based on what I heard, sales are up really on across the nation, despite strong online and offline competition. I mean, you've got Warby Parker in the mix, and you've got other brands that are obviously fighting for share. Can you take us back to the key foundational changes that you started making as early as 5 years ago?
Sure. So I joined the company 5 years ago, and I told the story where my first day at Luxottica, I turned on my computer, excited, I got a new email address, and I got an email from a member of our franchise advisory council. We're a franchise-owned business. We're owned by doctors. And the email essentially said this: Dear Doug, welcome to Pearle Vision. I hope you suck less than the last person that had your job. And so there's two ways to go. You can either laugh or you could cry. I chose to see it as an opportunity. And as I dug in, what I realized was that this iconic brand, and at the time the brand was about 55 years old, was stuck in the death spiral of where brands never want to live, which is in the middle. Over the last decade, the brand essentially had 10 different positionings, 10 different reasons to believe, none of which caught fire. And that's not because they were bad positions. It's because what the team lacked was the epicenter of what makes us successful as marketers, which is that consistency. Consistently consistent. Gotta be it.
And what's interesting to me about that, I completely agree. And I talk to a lot of CMOs, and one of the things that they feel an urgent need to do is get to something out the door in 6 months. And the thing that worries me about that approach is that while you're rushing to get it out, the foundation isn't solid enough to build a 5-year, 10-year plan against. So when you got started the process, I mean, how long did you give yourself to get to a new positioning?
If you know anything about retail, there's a sense of urgency. I essentially had 6 months to crack the code. In fact, when I joined the company, my predecessor actually remained on the team to essentially keep the business going while I was working on crafting the future state. And so within 6 months, we had defined what the brand was going to stand for. We identified that we needed to update the iconography, that we needed to update the store design, and we began on the journey. But by no means does the journey begin and end in 6 months. It starts, and it's a journey that you have to continually press on every day.
Okay, so 6 months. So that gives you 3 months to research and 3 months to execute. Let's just talk about the positioning that you landed on, and then we can break that down.
So the positioning, which eventually became genuine eye care from your neighborhood doctor, really came about from a philosophy that I brought to the company that I learned when I became a client. I started out in the agency business and went to the dark side of the force and became a client when I was at Avon. And when I went to Avon, I spent my first 6 weeks as an Avon lady. I like to tell my friends that I can still sell the shit out of a lip gloss. And the reason why I went out into the field is because any marketer worth his weight in gold knows that a positioning that doesn't make for great execution is just words on paper. And so looking inward to what we stood for as a brand required me to look outward from the boardroom, get into our locations, talk to our doctors, talk to our franchisees, understand what we really were embodying in a three-dimensional way, and then eventually bringing that back and looking at what we as a brand could really own. And as a brand founded by a doctor, Dr. Stanley Pearle in 1961, we had a heritage that we could stand for eye care. We needed to do it in a way that was genuine, authentic, real. We wanted to be that brand that owned the neighborhood, that could win the battle for patients at the 5-mile and the 9-mile level. And so every part of genuine eye care from your neighborhood doctor means something. It most importantly means the art of sacrifice. There's a lot of things we couldn't do. There's a lot of things we could do. We chose to do that.
Okay, I want to make one point here for any of you who have not read this wonderful book called Lincoln on Leadership. This is a good time to pause and go order that on Amazon. One of the Lincoln on Leadership things, it just came up, which is, despite the fact that you might have the best generals in the world, you need to get out in the field. And, he made his way to the battlefield so that he could inspect and he could talk to the troops and he could check on morale. And this was exactly what you're talking about.
Well, I have, honestly, I'm fortunate enough to work with an amazing operations team. And my head of operations, in addition to being my best friend on the business, is the guy who keeps me honest, who says, you know what, Doug, that's a great idea, but is it going to make for great execution? And getting out into the field, having that consumer mindset first, I think is what allows somebody to win in a marketplace like ours, highly commoditized, highly competitive, both on and offline.
So, all right. So we got out in the field. You discovered the sort of two things that you felt you could build the brand on. One being a genuine eye care, and we'll talk about that a little bit and what that means, but, and the implications of that. And then the neighborhood, and the localness of it. And it sort of reminds me in Good to Great of, Walgreens' position as, America's most convenient drugstore. So that there's certainly, and how they actually design, pick locations based on that. So, okay. When we get to that position of the eye care part, what I thought was interesting is, you have a doctor who founded it, so it's rooted in a truth of the brand. But you then decided to actually name, and call the folks, in the store something different because of that.
Yeah,
right?
We have doctors and we have opticians, but we basically refer to both of them as eye care experts. Our locations are next to a nail salon and a Chipotle and a strip mall. We're a strip mall based business. And so you really need to work even harder to let a consumer know when they're walking through the threshold of, we don't even call them stores anymore. They're eye care centers. We don't have customers. We have patients. And the reason why is because when you talk to somebody and you call them a patient, it automatically denotes a higher level of care. These seem like really, really small things, but in the spirit of the sum of marginal gains, all of these nuances have allowed us to really embrace the DNA of the brand and of the new positioning.
Yeah, I don't think those are small. I think those are huge, and they don't often happen. But they're famous when they do. I mean, Disney talks about their employees as cast members. Yeah. And so you're part of a show, and whether you're cleaning up the place or you are, you're Mickey Mouse that day. So I think having a name like that, particularly in a franchise system, and because my first clients were Century 21 Real Estate and several others, and getting the franchises to actually do sort of follow through on things is hard. And so, but I imagine in some ways this elevated their sense of who they were and what they were doing.
So leading a franchise system, and we actually call our franchisees licensed operators, leading a system made up of doctors, made up of opticians, means you have to lead by listening. You have to influence. And yes, there are times where you have to put your foot down and say, no, we are going to do this. But you want to inspire that trust, especially in a system like ours. Trust is really built in a series of small moments. And when we told the community, hey, look, this is what we are going to be going forward, The reason why that resonated is because we did the diligence of getting out and talking to them. The best positionings are reflective of who you are. There's a positioning idea where you want to be aspirational. I don't think that's it. I think it's about a positioning ideal where you want to be inspirational, something that you can actually achieve. And we knew that we could achieve genuine eye care because we had the people, we had the DNA. We just needed to get out of our own way and bring it forward.
That's a great place for us to take a break because I want to zero in on sacrifice because I think that's such an interesting area. But before I do, I want to ask you listeners a big favor. And I might have asked this before, but I'm going to ask again. If you haven't already subscribed to Renegade Thinkers Unite, take a second, put the episode on pause, go onto iTunes or iHeartRadio or Overcast or Stitcher, whichever you're listening on, and subscribe to the episode. That would be a wonderful thing. It really helps me. And there are so many great episodes in the pipeline that you don't want to miss and I don't want you to miss. So please subscribe.
Hey, it's Drew. I wanted to use this break to ask you a single question. Are you a courageous marketer? Do you have the courage to go to your board of directors and say, marketing could drive the growth of this company? We just need 3 times the budget. Do you have the courage to take the big idea that you already have and extend it internally and externally through influencers, through the media, through all of your content? If you're a courageous marketer but aren't sure how to roadmap all of this, I have a big idea for you. It's called Renegade Thinking. It's a program that we've developed and work with exclusively for B2B marketers, generally at large companies. And I want to give you my cell phone, 917-679-8852. Just text Renegade Thinking to 917-679-8852, and we can talk about how you can cut through.
Okay, we're back. And my guest is Doug Zarkin, the head of marketing for Pearle Vision, the global eye care company. And we were just talking about this notion of sacrifice. And I've talked to a lot of CMOs. In fact, I've interviewed them. I got a copy of my book right here, and there's 64 in there. And I think on last count, it's well over 200. And none of them have ever actually used the term sacrifice, which is interesting. They've talked about focus, and I think that's what you mean. But I really want to dive into that. What does sacrifice mean to you?
So I go back to what my first boss taught me out of grad school, which was that marketing is the art of positioning, which is the art of sacrifice. Sacrifice really being there are a lot of things you could say, but what are the opportunities where you believe you can win? In our category, we carry the best-in-class assortment of frames. We are owned by Luxottica, who owns Ray-Ban and Oakley and the master license to probably the top 20 brands in the world. And we could talk at length about the amazing product we carry, and we do in some channels. But that wasn't going to really distinguish us in a growing, commoditized category. And so we had to look at what was going to allow us to win. And that was really the spirit of Dr. Pearle, who realized that his vision was to combine a best-in-class doctor with that unmatched commitment to care from the exam room to the retail floor, adding on the best available frames and the state-of-the-art lenses to become that neighborhood destination that people trust with their eye care and eyewear needs. Deconstruct all of that. A best-in-class doctor with an unmatched commitment to care. If we did that really well, we began to earn the right to win.
I get it. And what we're talking about is, really, strategy is often defined by as much by what you don't do as what you do. And so I get it now that sacrifice is really simply committing to a strategy, which means not doing a lot of things, but doing a few things really well. So we've got those two things now in terms of we're focused on. And by the way, I think it's really interesting with founder-based brands in some ways how often it ends up circling back to the founder in some way or another. And, on an earlier episode that happened to be on VR and KFC, the folks at KFC did a VR experience, but they brought that kernel back in kind of a creepy way, but it was fun. But it was important because they wanted to talk about the Colonel's original recipe and how he cooked it, and in fact, what he called the hard way. So I think is something that's kind of unique to, founder brands, and some brands worry about that because it might make them feel old-fashioned. Right. How do you balance that sort of, okay, we had a founder 50 years ago and business has changed. Why do I care about that today?
A founder brand has inherently an authenticity to it. Marketers like me, like some of the best in class, are always looking for that emotional connection point. We're storytellers. We want to connect with a consumer on an emotional level and present them rational reasons to believe. When you have a founder brand like Pearle, if you actually do what many marketers don't, which is to have the humility to realize that sometimes taking the step forward is taking 2 steps backwards, what you actually have is something that you can build a plan off of, build a vision off of. Ralph Lauren is a great example. Founder-led brand, founder-driven brand. Ralph Lauren has a very distinct look on fashion. When Ralph started to go awry as a brand, as a business, is when it got away from its DNA. Pearle, the same thing. Dr. Stanley Pearle was not there talking about buy one, get one free. Dr. Stanley Pearle's vision started with that best-in-class doctor. And I see my job really is, to a degree, getting out of the way and allowing his legacy to continue in a way that's modern, in a way that's contemporary, in a way that resonates. But why fight it? If you have it, embrace it, leverage it, lead with it. That's how you win.
Okay. So a couple of things there that came out, and lots of folks use the term storytelling and talk about emotion. But then I basically see product driven ads, right? Yeah. And so, and I would even argue that your positioning statement, which is an internal thing, the emotion doesn't sort of shine through. Sure. How have you been able to sort of get that emotion out there, in the marketplace?
Well, you hit it. Positioning is an internal facing statement. We don't go out to consumers and say genuine eye care from your neighborhood doctor. I like to say your positioning is showing when you do that. The emotional translation of that is nobody cares for eyes more than Pearle. I had the opportunity to bring that back into our vernacular a couple of years ago. And the magic in those words is that it basically sets us up as the standard bearer for what quality of care in the category should be. What we've realized is that if we get you to trust us with your eyes, you'll trust us to help you guide you for that eyewear choice. It's eye care first allows us to win in selling eyewear. And so actually Pearle Vision's entire model as a franchise business, we're actually compensated based on dispensing sales, not even on what the doctor makes. And so you may ask yourself, well, why are you focusing on driving patients if you're compensated based on sales of eyewear? What we've realized is that one allows us for the other. If we're converting 60, 70, 80% of the people who visit one of our eye care experts into a retail customer, we're winning. They're trusting us from the exam room to the retail floor. That is very different than somebody who's clicking on a Warby Parker ad and seeing 3 pairs for $99. It takes it from commodity into care-based. And that's why we are winning, is care-based.
Okay. And there are several interesting things that I just want to point out. And the insight here is critical, is that how you capture a customer matters. And so it's so interesting. So if they come in because they want to get their eyes checked, they'll buy the glasses. If they come in to buy glasses, they may or may not buy glasses. If they come in because you have one, buy one, get one, they might do it, but they're not a customer. They're not an advocate. And I think that's really interesting. But there's lots of conversation about that, in terms of that's sort of an ideal. And I want, because you shared some numbers, I want to just talk about the result of this approach and what it's meant for the business.
So what I will say is the following. When we look at things like doctor quality perception, we're up consistently double digits per annum. When we're looking at exam comps, we are doing well above +5 over the last few years per annum. When we look at Net Promoter Score, what people think about us, we are doing better than we ever have done. But most importantly, I can honestly say that we are a brand where our owners trust us. And they trust us over a series of small moments that we have created. Small moments could be as simple as delivering the best product on time at the best price. Small moment could be providing them with an integrated marketing platform that they never had before. Small moment could be just simply being there as an asset for them to listen to. But our success, our trajectory, as part of Luxottica is that we are truly as a system growing. Last year we added over 15% footprint to our already strong, footprint nearing 600 locations. And so when Entrepreneur Magazine came out and rated us the number 24 franchise opportunity, which was up from 91 a year ago, and you look at why we were elevated, it's because what we do is we allow people who come to Pearle Vision to focus on what they want to focus on, which is commitment to care. We surround them with a turnkey ability to take their practice, if they're an existing doctor, and make it great. But what we really do is we provide them an opportunity to win in a marketplace that's becoming heavily consolidated, heavily commoditized, and even more competitive every day, because we understand that in order to win in this category, and it is about winning, which means somebody has to lose. To win means you have to listen. To win means you have to lead. To win, you must always be thinking about consumer perception, because as smart as we are, and I'd like to think I'm a relatively smart guy, you're never going to be as smart as your consumer. And so getting out and making sure you're listening all the time is allowing us to be successful.
Love it. Perfect place to take another break. Listening is one of the key chapters in my book. But before I take this break, I'm going to give you all my cell phone number. It's 917-679-8852. You can put it on pause. I'll say it again. 917-679-8852. And I'm giving this to you because I'm hoping a few of you will text me, and maybe you'll figure out a question that I should have asked Doug, and I'll email him afterwards and text it back to you. Or maybe you'll have some suggestions that you'd like to hear of people that you'd like to have me interview, or simply because you want to share the best places for guacamole in your town, because we renegade thinkers can certainly unite around the perfection of a ripe avocado. So we'll be right back.
Hey, it's Drew. I was at a conference the other day and somebody looked at my saw lapel pin and said, "What's up with that?" And I said, "Well, what's the one thing that marketing has always had to do? Forget digital, forget all this stuff. What is the one marketing imperative?" And he looked at me and went, "Cut through." And I went, "Yes, ding, 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 ding. That's right. Cut through. That is what marketing must do." And it's not just cutting through the clutter, although that's really important, because if your marketing doesn't cut through the clutter, it's like the proverbial tree in the forest that falls and nobody hears it. But it's also cutting through the crap and the processes that inhibit innovation. We've been working a lot lately with some CMOs to help them cut through the crap and get at the essence of what is their big idea and how can they make a case to expand that idea across their business. That, to me, is cutting through.
Okay, we're back with Doug Zarkin, head of marketing for Pearle Vision, and we've already covered a lot of ground. And I want to let's look at some nitty gritty execution. Let's talk about, for example, your social media strategy.
So, has the world of Facebook changed. Social media is evolving every day. What once was a platform that was about the number of fans you have has truly turned into a pay-for-play opportunity where there is almost no such thing as organic reach. But what's most importantly is what Facebook in particular has allowed Pearle to do, and I talked about it before, is really listen. We get a tremendous amount of feedback. Mostly good, but some not. And you've got to take as serious the not good as you do the good and celebrate the both. Because when a consumer responds to you on Facebook and tells you a story of how you've let them down, it's an opportunity to get better. for us, social media is really an opportunity to continue the conversation. And it's turned actually into one of the most effective platforms for driving exam growth. If you look at the marketing ROI, in our category, there are a few things that are as efficient as search, trademark search as an example. Social media is really up there in terms of efficient ways to drive people to schedule their eye exams.
We're talking about paid.
We're talking about paid. Okay. And so we've actually figured out through trial and error, we've got a fantastic agency on board, Energy BBDO out of Chicago, who handles our social content for us. The balance, the healthy balance between leading the conversation, listening to the conversation, and actually having a conversation. Facebook is not a one-way communication platform. It's actually an opportunity to do what you and I are doing right now, which is to talk. And so you've got to think about that as a dialogue. It's a tennis match. If you play tennis, I'm an avid tennis player. Not every point in tennis, not every forehand or backhand is a winner. It sets up the next shot. We look at social media as an opportunity to essentially engage our consumer in a tennis match. Sometimes we're going to win the point. Sometimes we're going to lose the point. Sometimes the point's just going to go on, and we're going to wish that it would just end. But for us, the respect that we have for social in particular, Facebook leading that charge, it is one of our strongest marketing platforms.
I don't doubt it. And it's a great platform in the sense that if you do the paid media and you have a really good chance of engaging with that customer. I noticed that you didn't post that often. I mean, I think it was like sometimes there was an 8-day gap, between posting. And for us at Renegade, typically we like to see our clients post more, recognizing you need to boost posts and almost regularly. But to not be there, feels like you're not even for the 1% that you reach organically, you're just sort of kind of not active.
So it's a great question. I could violently disagree with you on your approach, but here's what I'll say. We started out when we really began Facebook in particular about 5 years ago when I joined the business we did about 20 to 25 posts a month. And then we took a step back and we said, listen, okay, I'm married. I'm happily married. I've been married for 14 years. But do I want to hear from my wife on Facebook 3, 4, 5 times a week? The answer is no. And so we had to have the humility to realize that as a brand, we are a brand. We are a brand with an 18 to 24 month purchase cycle. There had to be a balance between wanting to talk, needing to listen, and just frankly not trying to work so hard. What we've actually done is invested more time, more money, more resources into curating a communications platform on Facebook where every post we do has purpose. We're not posting, hey, I went and I got great guacamole. We're posting about something that's meaningful. It could be about the solar eclipse. It could be about the power of RX Sun. It could be a fun contest where we're giving away a great pair of RX frames. For us, we needed to kind of play that simple game of, and I'd say simple in quotes, of what was the right level of communication. And I would say we're communicating anywhere between, 1 and 3 times a week, depending on the week. The Eclipse was a big communication platform push for a lot of brands. We did a fun post. We put a nice amount of money behind it, and we started to get traction. That was an example of a week where we maybe only posted once. When we start to get to the holidays and we start talking about gift giving and using your benefits, you will naturally see us dial up. But I think the mistake that a lot of marketers make with Facebook is because you can doesn't mean that you do.
Again, the notion of sacrifice. And I get that. I think, in my sort of rebuttal on this is that, it depends on the story that you are committed to telling on an ongoing basis. And by story, I typically mean not what the brand, something bigger than the brand.
Right.
And, what's interesting about your business is vision. What could be more important to someone than clear vision and the importance of vision, and it's part of your brand. So I feel like there is a larger emotional story, that what it means to see and not see and the connection that you can make. And those stories, like I'm interested in tennis, for example, like you. I play tennis. I went to the U.S. Open this year, and I wouldn't mind getting an update on Facebook from on tennis from almost any brand. Now, they were not going to do it unless they happen to be Wilson and they're targeting me. But so it really depends. Now, I agree. I don't want to hear from Pearle Vision 5 times a week if the conversation is, hey, we've got these nice Ray-Bans, or, we've got this thing, because I don't have that interest in it. But I am very interested in seeing the world through some interesting lenses that you guys could provide.
I go back to your first statement, which is, there's nothing more important than vision care. If that was the case, you wouldn't see the rise of the commoditization in our category where people are buying their groceries at the same place they're getting their eyes checked. And you would think that you would want to spend more than $37 on a complete pair or a free eye exam. If you were going in, God forbid, if you had a health issue, a heart, would you want to go to a doctor who's offering you a free cardiogram, or would you want to go to the best doctor? And so as much as I wish that everybody in the category felt like you do about the importance of eye care, the humility, and that's a common theme that I think as I've gotten older, I've realized that marketers in general have to have an ego. That's part of what makes us successful. But when it comes to your consumer, you have to have humility. And the landscape, especially in the U.S., demands that marketers in our category have a humility to realize that there are some consumers that truly put a premium on eye care. Those are the consumers that we want at Pearle. But if your idea, and I'll use fashion, of a suit that you're going to wear to a wedding is going to H&M and spending $99, then you're probably not going to think a complete pair at $5.99 or $6.99 is value. Value equals experience over price. And so for Pearle, we're looking to deliver an amazing experience. We will never be the cheapest. Frankly, our doctors go to medical school. Our opticians are trained. We should command a fair price for what we do. And I think that's one of the hardest things, is that it's an altruistic thing to say, I'm delivering an amazing experience and I should be able to command a good price for it. But you have to have the gravitas. You have to have the moxie to actually deliver it. And I think that's been our journey the last couple of years, is really reinforcing the focus of the brand, less on promotion, and really becoming that premium eye care provider that Dr. Stanley Pearle envisioned when he started the business in Savannah, Georgia in 1961.
Hey, it's Drew. I have a question for you, the audience. How good is your content? We all believe in content marketing, but is your content good enough for you to share it with the CEO and want him to share it with his peers? Is it good enough for your salespeople to share with their prospects? Heck, is it good enough for you to share it with your mom? If the answer to all of those questions was no, well, it's not that good, and you're also celebrating things like National Donut Day, it's probably a good idea to do a content audit. And I know just the person to help you out with that. Text content audit to 917-679-8852. That's actually my cell phone. And we can talk about how to get your content to be world class and do all the things that you know it should be able to do. So you can text content audit to 917-679-8852. And let's figure out together how to get your content to cut through.
So as we sort of start to wrap up, I'm curious, and I almost always ask my guests this, which is, what's the toughest lesson that you've learned in terms of marketing over the last 5 years of Pearle Vision?
I think it's the 80% rule. There are very few decisions in marketing, which is an art and a science, that require you to have 100% certainty. There are some that do. Understanding what the 80% rule is, meaning that you have 80% of the reason to believe that that's the right decision. And that may be fueled by data. It may be fueled by gut instinct. My approach is to use a balance of art and science to get to that 80% rule. But finding out what those decisions are that are the most meaningful, that really require that last 20%, I think has probably been the thing that hopefully I've been able to capture in my role at Pearle over the last couple of years.
That balance of art and science. And we didn't go into that in a great detail, but I think you covered it. All right. My last question for you is, we have a group of marketers listening, a lot of senior marketers, and give us 2 do's and 1 don't as we look to put our 2018 plans together?
So, first of all, you made the wrong choice, guys. You should have got into finance. The bonuses are better. So that's the first thing I'll say. But in seriousness, I think the first piece of advice that I would say to any marketer, whether you're a senior level or junior level, is kind of going back to my analogy about Avon. Start your journey by getting out of the boardroom, get out of the office. If you are a service business, go talk to the associates on the front lines. If you are a product that is sold on a shelf, go out into the environments in which your product are sold and watch. It could be a little creepy. I've gotten thrown out of my share of stores in over my career. But start your journey from the end of the communications train. It will make you inevitably smarter when it comes to that gut instinct, that art part. The second thing that I would strongly encourage is to recognize that there is no sense fighting the movement to a world of big data. But big data demands a discipline in not only the storytelling that comes from the analysis, but an incredible rigor in the questions that you are asking. Data is an output of what you ask. We can look at the 2016 election as a great example of where perhaps the questions weren't phrased the right way and you got data that ended up being wrong. Focus more time on crafting the questions than you probably would naturally do. Get to know your customer insights team. Take a moderator's course. I'm a licensed moderator. Learn how to ask questions. Again, our job is to listen and lead. Listening means you have to ask a question in a way that's going to elicit good input or good output. And that's both qualitatively and quantitatively. Don't lose sight of the fact that the complexity in our business is truly in the simplicity. At the end of the day, marketing's job is to motivate a consumer to take action. That action may be to buy a product. It may be to visit a service. But you can get caught up in a lot of things that marketing is asked to do. The complexity of our industry, of our discipline, is really in the simplicity of what at the end of the day we need to achieve. If you don't lose sight of that, chances are you're going to be able to lay out a vision that's going to inspire, that's going to allow you to be focused and allow you to win.
That was an amazing wrap up, and typically at the end of every episode I provide a wrap up, and I don't really think that's necessary. I mean, I think that the key theme here that I ask you to think about, and I did this in an earlier episode as well, is try to narrow your positioning down to 2 words or 3 words or 4 words. Get it down to a couple thoughts. When you listen to the episode with Jackson from Boxed, he got it down to 2 words: delivering joy. What you really heard today is sort of professional level eye care in the neighborhood, right? It was doctor local or optometrist local, and you heard that, and we talked about it over and over again, and how that affected the language that they used to describe the employees, and how they position. One of the things that Doug didn't mention is how that also had an impact on the media plan that they put together, and how that ended up they made a sacrifice, and they weren't everywhere. But where they were in a market, and focus on that. So there's a lot of focus came up over and over and over again. And I think that's a great, place for us to focus on. And so thank you so much, Doug, for being on the show. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.
This has been Renegade Thinkers Unite, but it doesn't end there. Just go to renegadethinkersunite.com for more and subscribe to the show. That way, you'll never miss an episode. We'll talk with you next time on Renegade Thinkers Unite.